Welcome to Module 3 of the Playground Safety Training. In our last module, we went over play and how important outdoor learning can be for children's development. In this module, we will highlight the hazardous elements that children and staff can come in contact with on the playground. To prevent injuries on the playground, child care centers should provide hazard-free environments. In order to do this, you first have to know how to identify a hazard. There are several types of hazards that we will talk about during this training. First, let's discuss the difference between a risk and a hazard. What does a risk mean to you? A risk is a situation involving exposure to danger. It contains a judgment of a decision. For example, when we drive a car, we decide that a left-hand turn across traffic can be made safely by making a judgment of the distance and the speed of oncoming cars. Likewise, while swinging, children decide to jump off and out because they have judged themselves not too high above the ground to hurt themselves when they land. So now let's talk about the definition of a hazard. It is a danger, risk, or something unavoidable that cannot be seen or judged. For example, adults say that a blind corner is a driving hazard because we cannot judge if and how fast other traffic is approaching. A child can fall because a worn-out S-hook from a swing breaks with the stress of the swinging motion. In this situation, there was no judgment involved because the child could not see or evaluate the condition of the S-hook. Another example of risk versus hazard would be a child using an overhead climber. The child makes a decision to move across the climber, which is a risk. However, the hazard, not seen by the child, would be the type of surfacing below the overhead climber. Children must take risks as part of the playing and learning process. Our goal is to remove the hazards. A playground that has eliminated all elements of risk will not be a successful one. In fact, this playground can probably only exist in theory. What we want to do in offering a safe play environment is to remove the hazards. Each child in a child care center must be provided with an outdoor learning environment that is safe and free of hazards. This includes properly maintaining all equipment and making sure it is in good repair. If commercially manufactured equipment is purchased for the child care center, it must be assembled and installed according to procedures specified by the manufacturer. Manufactured equipment is not required, and while it may offer unique opportunities and challenges for children, it should not dominate the outdoor learning environment. Some other conditions. Equipment accessible to children must be sturdy, stable, and free of hazards, which includes sharp edges, lead-based paint, loose nails, splinters, protrusions, pinches, and crush points. Any corners or edges should be rounded or should have capping. Plugging or covering open ends of tubing will also keep out curious fingers as well. All broken equipment must be removed from the premises immediately or made inaccessible to children. All nails and bolts must be flush with the outer surface of equipment. Metal edges should be rounded or capped as well. Children are not allowed to play on outdoor equipment that is too hot to touch. If the center has portable equipment, providers must make sure that it is used properly and safely. Mostly, these types will be found in childcare homes, not centers. The Consumer Product Safety Commission sent out an alert that indicated these pieces of equipment should never be placed over concrete, asphalt, wood, or other hard surfaces. It is best practice to conduct a morning safety walk to observe outdoor conditions before children go outside. This will help you to identify fallen limbs, trash, wasp nests, ice, or other hazards that sometimes come up overnight or weekend. The law exempts playground equipment on public school grounds used by school-aged children from having to meet the child care rules related to outdoor areas, including the playground safety training and completing the monthly playground inspections. The exemption does not exempt schools from having to remove or fix broken equipment if it is to be used by children. If equipment is not manufactured, there are some other hazards that you need to be aware of. Metal. A major concern for playground equipment is corrosion. Metal should be painted or galvanized to prevent rust. Any older equipment that is showing signs of chipping, paint, or rusting needs to be repainted immediately. Some older equipment could possibly have been painted using a lead-based paint, and there is some additional risk involved with that. If providers are concerned about potential lead-based paint hazards with their play equipment, they must contact their NCDCDEE consultant for guidance on lead hazards assessment and control. It is important to remember that despite these federal regulations, lead paint hazards with playgrounds have been discovered with equipment purchased as recently as 1991. Wood. There are still many playgrounds that are built using wood. Years ago, wood was treated using a form of arsenic to treat wood to help to prevent it from fungi, termites, and other insects. Now, wood treatment industries use 2-wood preservatives as substitute for CCA pressure-treated lumber. This includes alkaline copper quate type C and copper azote type B. These new generations of preservatives are designed to perform and handle the same as CCA pressure-treated lumber with no risk. High-dip galvanized or stainless steel fasteners are recommended for use with these new substitutes. Users of these new substitutes should remember they are more corrosive due to higher amounts of copper. Therefore, try to use stainless steel fasteners whenever possible. If budget does not permit this type of fastener, childcare providers need to use better grades of hot-dip galvanized fasteners. If providers have purchased their materials or built structures within the last few years, their materials are probably treated with one of these methods. Although this is not a current concern, we still wanted you to be aware of this type of treated materials and what risks and precautions should be taken. Protrusions on playground equipment should not be capable of entangling children's clothing. They have been involved with serious injuries and even deaths due to strangulation when drawstrings become entangled with these hazards. When children prepare to go outdoors, looking for untied laces, drawstrings, or other dangling materials can help eliminate these risks. Playground safety researchers have developed various test methods and instruments to identify protrusion hazards called gauges. Gauges are hollow tubes, usually plastic or PVC pipe, in the 3 different dimensions. The first gauge is made to test the ability of an item to puncture a child's temple or head. It is 0.50 inch inside diameter, 1.0 inch outside diameter, and has a height of 0.25 inches. The second gauge is made to test the ability of an item to puncture a child's eye socket. It is 1.5 inches inside diameter, 2.0 inches outside diameter, and has a height of 0.75 inches. The third gauge is made to test the ability of an item to puncture a child's chest, ribs, and/or stomach. It is 3.0 inches inside diameter, 3.5 inches outside diameter, and has a height of 1.5 inches. If providers locate an exposed bolt or component on their equipment that may entangle children's clothing or cause injuries, providers should use gauges to test the protrusions. To test, place each gauge over any protruding item, starting with the smallest gauge first. Try to fit it over the component. If it does not fit, move to the next one. When one of the gauge fits over the suspect component, look and see if any pieces of the component extends beyond the face of the gauge. Any part of the component that extends beyond the face of the gauge, it is a protrusion hazard and should be removed. Removal of these hazards may be as simple as cutting long bolts short or replacing plate components. Places to look for protrusion include bolts on equipment or fences, handrails on spring rockers, or other fixed equipment. Providers can build their own gauges using the above measurements and appropriate materials. There are some situations in which protrusions can pass the 3-gauge test but also still be a hazard. Anytime the diameter of a protrusion increases as you move away from the initial surface, a potential for a hook-like effect occurs. Let's look at these two examples. In the first picture, you can see that the diameter of the protrusion is the same size from the surface to the end. All parts of this protrusion pass the 3-gauge test. In the second picture, you can see that the diameter of the protrusion is not the same size from the surface to the end. The protrusion passes the 3-gauge test because the outer elements is wider than the areas at the base of the surface. Although it passes, this still causes a protrusion hazard because it caused a hook-like effect and can entangle children's clothing. Therefore, we advise that child care centers use materials that not only passes the 3-gauge test, but also eliminates the possibility of entanglement. Do you remember these play equipment from your childhood? I'm pretty sure you do. Do you remember getting injured playing on these equipment? And working with children, another hazard to be aware of involves play pieces that have components that move against one another or move relative to a stationary component. These pieces may have pinch, crush, or shearing points. Our goal is to prevent children from having access to these points. Some of the equipment that might have these points include merry-go-rounds, seesaws, spring rockers, sand diggers, cladder bridges, steering wheels, tire swing chains, tricycle go-rounds. Special attention should be given to these types of equipment so we can guard against injuring hands. In the upcoming 2 modules, we will talk more in depth about the 4 playground hazards associated with playground incidents and injuries. This completes Module 3 of our playground safety training. If you have any questions, please feel free to visit the Playground Safety website at www.ncplaygroundsafety.org or visit our resource page on Moodle.